Kia ora.
Welcome to the NZ Ahead podcast. Everything you need to know about moving to and living in New Zealand.
There's a whole world here.
So nice to be with you again.
We call it Aotearoa around here, bro.
You'll be right.
We are your hosts, Liz and Brian.
Amazing New Zealand in the southern seas.
See, that's where I belong. That's home.
So yeah, she absolutely loves it. So I just said,
She's found her place.
Yeah, she just found her place.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're here to talk about talented and gifted children.
Yes.
And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
No problems at all.
I can't believe that we have been friends for, knocking on 10 years, something like that, isn't it?
More than that, I think.
Yeah. And now I finally get to sit down and find out exactly what you do.
Yeah.
And just you're going to bring so much value to this conversation because... Anyway, I'm not going to talk anymore. I just want you to introduce yourself and say who you are, and let's just go from there.
Awesome. Well, my name's Kim. Liz and I, we met through homeschooling. I made the decision to homeschool my son, and then that, as it does, rolls on to all the other children. I've got 3 kids. 2 of them are away from home now. My son's in the army. He's 20, and my eldest is... just completing her Masters in Heritage Studies. So she's a bit of a museum history buff. Wow. Yeah, so really proud of them.
Yeah.
And my youngest is 14. She's at high school now. So I made the decision to go back into teaching. And I work with a trust for gifted education. And I've been there for 4 years.
Right.
So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, hang on a minute, lady. Hang on a minute. Let's wind back.
Good talking.
See ya. So, first of all, when I met you, you were homeschooling.
Yes.
You were like my homeschooling hero, to be honest, because you were homeschooling Ruby was a little bit young, but you were homeschooling your 2 at the time, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right.
But you were... Before that, you were a principal, a deputy principal?
I was, yes, yeah.
How come you didn't say that? Don't let that go. That's important.
Oh, that's a whole other life.
So you were a deputy principal?
Yeah, so I trained as a teacher. Okay, well, wind it back. Well, I trained as a teacher and was primary school teaching, and my career led me to a city school here in New Plymouth as a deputy principal. Right. And but then when I had my family, I pulled away from my career a little bit and went into homeschooling after that. So but that was quite a while ago.
That was a while ago.
It does feel like a whole other life.
Yeah. Can I just ask you? I mean, this isn't. This is more of a New Zealand podcast. We're talking about New Zealand, but yes. I'm so fascinated with homeschooling, and I'm sure you've answered this question loads of times before. But being a deputy principal at a school, what made you homeschool?
Depends which day you ask me. I some days I feel like I was kind of bullied into it. I felt that I had put a huge amount of effort into the students that I came across in my career, and they really mattered to me, and I worked really hard to make sure that their needs were being met. And when I saw one of my own children whose needs weren't being met, it made me pause and think, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so we went down some avenues of finding out how to get more support for him in school. And those really came to a head where I felt I was a little bit in a corner. I thought, I don't know what else to do. I'm going to have to teach him myself.
Right.
And that was a really hard conversation. He was in the school that I had been deputy principal at. And it was a really tough conversation because fundamentally I was kind of saying to them, I think I can do a better job. And that wasn't a conversation that was easy for me to have. I have huge ups for mass education for the institution, I guess, in that they've got a lot to deal with. They've got limited resources. And it is there to educate the masses. It's there to educate large groups of children. That's what the whole system is based on. So after that conversation, I pulled him home. He had been diagnosed with auditory processing disorder, which is just rife, really. It's everywhere. But,
what does that mean?
So processing disorders are the way that your brain takes in information, and his happened to be auditory. So he had very, very little. We still joke about this now. He's 20 years old. he had very little working memory. So in a classroom, if he's overloaded with stimuli and overloaded with instruction and if the teacher said, go and get your writing book out, leave it on your desk, head up with today's date, put your pen beside it and come meet me on the floor, he was with pen. I got pen.
Yeah. And
he missed everything else. And so that he took a real knocking with that.
Right.
And so I thought, you know what, let's try something a bit different. And so we brought him home. And poor kid. You would think that being a teacher is a good thing for homeschooling, but I learned very quickly it's actually not. And some of the best homeschoolers are not teachers, I'm telling you that now. Everyone around you goes, oh, you're a teacher, that's really good. Yeah. But actually, there's a lot of unlearning you need to do about how learning takes place and what that looks like in the because it's really intimate and really well, you'll know it's full on, you know.
Yeah.
And in the hurly-burly of a classroom, it's less so. And so poor kid, he started with a whiteboard in front of him with the days, you know, spelling at 10.
Yeah.
Handwriting at 10:30.
Yeah.
I look back now and I cringe. I think, oh, poor kid.
No, you did a great job.
But it was part of all of our journey. And once I let go of all of those rigours of school, that's when we really started to take off and do some really cool things, yeah.
Because how long did you homeschool for in all?
Oh, 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years. Same as me. It's a long time, isn't it, Kim?
It's a long time.
I hope they're going to be grateful when they grow up.
I think they have waves. Thanks for that. I understand now what my 14-year-old just said to me. I understand what you were trying to do. Yeah. So that's a big breakthrough moment, you know.
I mean, like I say, not now, but I'd love to talk to you, come back and talk to you about the homeschooling side, because for one thing in particular, people always say, don't they, if I was a teacher, it would be easy. So I'd love to get your story about that, because you were a teacher. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about the talented and gifted side in education. But before we jump into that, can I just say, it's really funny because when you were just describing your son, Kieran, and you were saying that he could only take one instruction at a time, how does he get on now then in the army?
I know, exactly, right? And he still says, remember, Mum, no working memory. So the thing that we found about him is that the more structure there is, the better it is.
Ah.
So he was put into an advanced class, actually. When he went, he chose that he wanted to go and have a try at intermediate. His first year at intermediate was fabulous. He absolutely flew. Second year at intermediate, struggled, and he was put in the top stream in that intermediate class. And so their whole program was thrown wide open, and he has struggled. He went in at the top stream first year at high school, and again it wasn't him, and he came back home and homeschooled for the rest of his high school journey. I've gone off the question. What was how does he cope in the army? So what we found was one of the things we got him to do was martial arts.
Oh, right.
And martial arts is something where they say, you know, do it this way, move this way, this is the sequence, and he absolutely blossomed.
Did he?
And then we put him into cadets, which introduced him to army life. And again, he absolutely blossomed. He's a person that says, tell me how to do it, tell me how you want it to look, I will do that. And so the army life for him has been a perfect match. And as he's gotten older, he can strategize around the shortcomings, you know. And he does that very, very well. Yeah, he's actually he's a bright kid, but he needed the right environment.
That's brilliant. That's so interesting. I love hearing stories like that. You know, like how do they? Where are they now?
It's like, he's in the army.
But who would have known? Hey, all those years ago.
Absolutely.
When you think, you know, it's almost like you label it as a problem, but actually it's his strength. You know, you want people like that in the army, don't you?
Exactly.
You know?
And if you take that concept and move that into talented and gifted, or gifted and talented, then you're on the right track. Yeah. Because things that can be problems are actually strengths.
Right. Yeah.
And with any, you know, with any special need. Yeah.
So let's jump into the talented and gifted side of things. And I've got to admit here, I know nothing about this subject. So what I've done is I put it out to our private community,
Fabulous,
our New Zealand calling community, and they came back with some questions and said, oh, could you just ask this? People who are, you know, and I just can't wait to find out more about it. But first of all, what is talented and gifted?
Cool. Let's unpack it a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'd separate the two of them. We don't use the word talented at all. Talents is something you develop. it's the good old 10,000 hours, learn to play golf,
Yep.
and get better at it. It's something that you select and choose. It's something that, yes, you have strengths in, but it's something that you work at to grow your skill and strength in that area. So it's something you can manipulate.
Right.
Whereas giftedness is a neurodiversity. It's the way that your brain works. It's something you're born with, and it's going to be a part of you for your life. And it often comes overlapped. We call them twice exceptional. It comes overlapped with other exceptionalities like the ASD spectrum, the auditory spectrum. Autistic spectrum, back on auditory, the autistic spectrum. It can also include dyslexia. It can include all sorts. There's lists of exceptionalities that our wonderful brains can be overlapped with. And so for each gifted student, it could look quite entirely different. So giftedness comes, it's not just bright kids. Bright kids are... We include bright kids, we include advanced knowledge in certain areas, but they're certainly not all going to be astrophysicists. They're all not going to be incredible mathematicians. Some of them, if you look at creative people out there that are also gifted, they are your musicians, they are your writers, they are your your politicians, they are the people that play incredible tennis, they are the Novak Djokovic's of this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see his incredible brain and the what that brings as part of his, but he's a tennis player, and his tennis playing is where his giftedness has come out. But the brain that he has so many different layers to it in terms of how he approaches justice and social awareness and all those sorts of things. So what we're looking for in gifted students is we're actually looking for a set of characteristics rather than an IQ.
Right.
And that's the main difference. So giftedness is a neurodiversity that you're born with. It often comes with lots of other intricacies and exceptionalities. And it's something that you learn to grasp its strengths and use its strengths. And sometimes it can come with a lot of our students are socially, they struggle socially. So it's learning how to be who they are, think the way they think, and fit, with other people. So that's basically the difference.
Right, okay. Yeah. Wow. So you don't use the word talented anymore. So it's just
we don't
gifted.
Simply because
is that just New Zealand or just you or your
internationally?
Oh, it's internationally.
Yeah.
Right.
Talent is something that is grown.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is practiced. Yes, you have a strength in it, and yes.
Sorry, that's just my dog just barging through the door.
I love that she opens the door herself.
She does. She just jumps up and opens the door. Let me just close it a minute. Naughty girl.
She's beautiful.
Thanks. Classic. Well, if you're going to sit there, don't sit there wagging your tail then. Where were we? So... What was I just saying?
Talent, the word talented.
Yeah.
And so you can be gifted and talented.
Yeah.
Very rarely are you... Did I not?
Kim. Go on, very rarely what?
Very rarely are you... I apologise.
That's all right. My dog's just wrecked the show anyway, so that's fine.
Very rarely are you... what was I saying? You can be gifted and talented, but you're not necessarily gifted if you have talents in certain areas.
Got it.
Yeah. So if you've got a child who's really strong in maths, doing exceptionally well in maths, they're bright. They're bright and they're doing well in maths. It doesn't necessarily mean they're gifted. Oh. So we are looking for characteristics of giftedness, like an incredible sense of justice, like there's let me think. So the characteristics of giftedness kind of speak to who you are rather than what you know. So we're not talking about filling our gifted students with more knowledge in areas. We're talking about the way that they approach their creativity, their depth of thought, their questioning, their sense of humour, those sorts of things.
Right, okay.
Kind of pertain to what giftedness is, rather than those things that just say that you're really good at a particular subject area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you I'm glad you said that, because I thought that, gifted kids were, like you say, the ones that could finish a maths test in 30 seconds flat, or just, I never thought about, like you've just said, there's lots of different aspects of it. Can I just go back a minute and just ask, because I just want to make the story clear. You finished homeschooling and then you went back into education. Did you go back as a teacher, or did you go, just tell me about that quick.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is that I don't work for the Ministry of Education, so I'm no longer in the official New Zealand schooling system. What I work for is I work for a trust which was founded by a woman who is now our CEO, who has an exceptionally gifted, two gifted students. And she came to New Plymouth for her husband's work and thought, what am I going to do with my kids? They put them into school, and they had needs that just weren't even being touched the sides of. And so she thought, let's get something going. Let's create something. So she started the trust, and they started with what they call an extension afternoon, where they had, I think they started with 7 kids for a couple of hours, where they met, because a big thing about giftedness is meeting like minds. So you bring together other gifted students, and they get together and they do some extension work together, and that was how it started, but it's certainly moved a very long way from there. So I work for this trust. We spent a number of years, I think 6 years, the trust spent using a curriculum that was written by a national business that is specifically for gifted students. And then last year we went off on our own. We wrote our own curriculum, and we're now in control of our own referrals to our program. And now the program has 122 students, and and a staff of 9. So it's grown, exponentially.
And I remember the time she headhunted you, didn't she? She was like, come on, work for. How did she find you? How did she?
Well, they put out, just like any job, they put out applications, and I'd heard about it. And because I felt like because of my homeschooling, I felt like mainstream teaching didn't match me any. I was just not back in the system. I couldn't see myself back in the box of the system. And it had changed a lot since I had, 10 years since I'd come out. And I wasn't sure that what it had become was where my passion lay. And so this opportunity came up, and I thought, man, this is perfect, because it's working in special education with a particular set of neurodiverse students. And so you can really passionately involve yourself. And our classes are small. We only have 16, a maximum of 16. And because we're not with the ministry, we can work in the parameters ourselves. We don't have to fit, we don't have to test, we don't have to. The way that we assess students' growth is completely different. Our schedule is completely different. We can bring experts in. We can do all sorts of things that you can't do in a mainstream sort of classroom.
Sounds like a really cool version of a homeschooling club.
It kind of is. It actually kind of is.
Sounds like the club you always wanted to go to.
I think it's because I've come from a homeschooling background that I kind of think, that's the way that it's sort of gone for me. Yeah. And fortunately or unfortunately for the trust, when new teachers come on, then I bring them into, we need to think that we're no longer in the system. We need to create our own space environment, and we need to meet the needs of the students. Yeah. And they're so diverse. If you met any one of our gifted students, they'd all look completely different. Yeah. From the extremely artistic that can't write to the extremely physical, sporting kids, to the political activists, to the, they're so diverse. And the incredible thing is that they come and they're so accepting of each other's differences. Right. And that's what you're wanting to grow, and then they're learning about themselves and how they could fit. And it gives them a space to breathe, because we find, especially with our gifted girls, for some reason, they underplay at school, and a lot of them are underachieving, so they're quite difficult to identify because of that. Yeah.
There's so many questions I want to ask you here, and first of all, I'm just going to ask you, how old are these kids? If you dream of moving to New Zealand, then you are going to love what I'm about to share with you. 12 years ago, when me and Bri emigrated to New Zealand, we were scouring the internet trying to find any information that we could about what our life would be like when we got here. And basically all we had was YouTube. So we made this vow. We said, when we get to New Zealand, we're going to create something that we can share with others that answers those questions that you're so desperate to know about. Like, what is your life going to be like when you get here? And that's what I'm here to offer you today. We have created a 5-day free, absolutely free video guide that shows you what it's really like to live in New Zealand. This stuff is unique and it is fabulous. You are not going to find it anywhere else on the internet. And like I say, it's absolutely free. You'll be sent a video every day for 5 days and you will know what it's like in New Zealand. So head over to the website. It's www.nzahead.com/free. One more time, that's www.nzahead.com/free. You are going to love it. First of all, I'm just going to ask you, how old are these kids?
So we start our program at about 7. We have a few that are in at 6 years of age.
Yeah.
I won't do year levels because that's just confusing.
Yeah.
And we go right through to sort of 13. So it's just as they're finishing their what we call intermediate and going into high school. So that's our range.
Right.
Yeah.
Why did you not go anyhow? Why do you not go through high school?
Initially we didn't because the curriculum that we were using didn't. It went to year 8, which is your 12, 13-year-olds. And that was it. The other thing is that our relationship with our schools is really important. Once you get into high schools, kids have got different schedules and programs and timetables. And the logistics of withdrawing, because our students are withdrawn from their schools for 1 day a week.
Yeah.
They're with us 1 day a week.
Yeah.
The logistics of doing that on a revolving timetable with all different teachers and different subjects and is really difficult.
Yeah.
It is... when I lose my year 8s into high school, it's really hard, and they feel like they're stepping into the big abyss, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely on our radar. It's something we want to expand into in some way. We don't know how yet. Yeah.
Now let me just go back. So this wonderful woman comes to New Plymouth and starts this fantastic homeschooling club for gifted children. Starts this program that you've part of it and you've grown.
Yes.
How do you? So you say it's not part of the ministry, so it's not part of the school system in New Zealand. So how did you get the students? Where did you get them from?
So this is quite a vital part of what we do. We have a relationship with all of our what we call our cluster schools. So the schools find out about us and we go to them, we tell them about the program, we tell them what we do, we tell them what we can do for their gifted students. Once they decide that they have an obligation for gifted students in New Zealand schools, yes.
Right.
And the ministry have had quite a push for gifted students and for meeting their needs. And so there is an obligation that they have now that they didn't have quite so much before to meet the needs of their gifted students. And you're always going to have some schools that go, yep, we feel like we're covering that really well. Other schools, especially once we do some work with the staff, they're saying, they hadn't even touched the sides of how many gifted students could be in their classes and what they might look like. Once we've gotten through that process, the school comes to us with referrals of gifted students.
Right, okay.
And so our relationship is ongoing with the school. So really 1/5, 1 day a week, those students are with us. And so we have to... there has to be a trust. There's quite a strong bond between our cluster schools and ourselves, and they rely on the fact that we're running the very best program, you know, that we can run for the gifted students.
What does that mean? What does cluster schools mean? What does that mean?
Well, that's just our term, really. It's the term that we give to our group of schools,
right?
In the Taranaki region that are now sending students to us.
Right, okay, got it.
So now we've got over 80% of schools in New Plymouth,
right,
who now send students to us.
That's fantastic. Sorry, I'm just moving my wires because my dog is asleep on the wires. All the house she's got, and she wants to come and sit next to us and listen to the podcast. So, it's life, isn't it? So... Are there other things like this in New Zealand, or are you the only one?
No, we're definitely not the only one. There is based in Wellington, there is a company who run a curriculum, a program that is all throughout New Zealand. And they were basically the only ones, and they were the ones who we used their curriculum. We have decided, and some of the provinces have decided to go out on their own. So now if you look at, there's probably 5 provincial areas around New Zealand that are running their own program, and then you've got the main program which is being run in all the main centres.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. Is there any...
Of which I'm not naming.
No. All right then. No. Yeah. Is there any area that you would think, okay, say if I was moving to New Zealand and I had a talented, gifted child, would I be looking to go to a certain area that could, accommodate me apart from New Plymouth? I mean, let's bring them to New Plymouth because they can come to you. Exactly. It's all
Taranaki where it's all happening.
Here, yeah.
Well, the good news is that there are a lot of areas that are being covered by one day pull-out programs now. So, and it's not just in the main areas, in the main centres, Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, Hamilton. The provincial areas, what you're going to find is they're there or they're not.
Right.
We exist because one parent came to the area, saw there was nothing there and created it. And the courage that it's taken her.
Don't you just love
amazing.
People like that?
Oh, she's phenomenal.
Like,
She's our CEO. Her name's Katja Eger.
Well
she's
done, girl.
a German woman. She's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I'm very fortunate to be working with her and working with our board. So the answer is not clear cut. I couldn't give you a list and say you could go here, you could go here,
right.
You could go here. Obviously, you come to where life takes you in this wonderful country of ours.
Yes.
And at the moment, schools, like I say, have an obligation to work with their gifted students. The term gifted, unfortunately, still carries quite a it's the elephant in the room, really. Some people don't like... We've taken it off we say advanced yet complex needs, students with advanced yet complex needs. So there is that advancement in thinking, but it's really complex. And there's lots of complexities that go with that too. And not all schools understand those complexities and understand the needs of those students. So my advice would be to ask... Definitely.
Yeah.
Ask if you come to a place like Taranaki, and I know, for instance, I know Dunedin has one like us that's gone now off on their own. So there are places, the provinces around the country that do run these pull-out programs.
Right.
So I guess you need to do your research.
Yes, definitely.
Otherwise, you are relying on what the schools are providing. Yeah. And we all know the load that they have with all the different needs of all their students. So,
right.
Yeah. I don't envy them at all.
If I was at school, if I had a child at school and I thought this child was really gifted, would that be up to me to then seek out someone to take them further? Or is it up to the school? Or is there like a set of rules that you'll say, oh, no, you didn't say it, your teacher said it, so now it's legit sort of thing?
Yeah. Like... What we find, actually, you can put parents into 2 categories. The parents that are wanting the advancement, and the parents that are going, oh, no, that's not my child. And right. So the parents that want the advancement say that sometimes don't understand the whole nature of giftedness. The ones that are not sure are the ones that are often struggling with their child socially, struggling with their child's, how do you put it? I was going to say tantrums, but that's not fair. But these kids can be really intense. Yes. And their intensities are really, really heightened. And those heightened intensities are the things that we teach in them. We say this is what it looks like. A lot of our kids have heightened sensory issues, eating certain textures of food, lights, sound. Sometimes we're in the middle. Our classroom is in an office, right. Literally in an office. And if we open the windows, they can hear the cars going by. And for some kids, that's too much. So those kind of sensorial heightened, we call them overexcitabilities. There are those that can't sit still. Those physical overexcitabilities, and my son was one of these. They need to move to learn, and that's a real struggle in a school environment. So a lot of times parents know that those intensities and overexcitabilities exist, but they haven't put it together with their advancement. They haven't put it together with this incredibly advanced thinking brain. The kids, the intellectual overexcitabilities are the ones that ask, but why, but what happens now, but what, those really, and those are the kids that stand out in classes because they're the ones with their hands up first. They're the ones that, oh no, I know that it goes, that's not right, it's like this. So all of those are intensities and overexcitabilities that they need to learn about how to manage, how to harness, how to see as a positive and not a negative. And so a lot of parents are going, oh no, they're seeing giftedness as your, physicists.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case. And so as we are working with teachers to identify what gifted kids look like, you get these aha moments with teachers where they're going, oh my goodness, that's little, what's his name? That's little young lady over there, And there's these light bulb moments as I'm working with teachers in schools saying, now I get it. I see those 3 kids in my class that I just thought one's a pain in the backside because he's constantly talking, constantly asking questions. This one's fidgeting and moving and making noise and, all the time. And this wee one over here is just real silent, doesn't say a word and has her head down most of the time, kind of thing. I should be careful about genders around that, but, so it's often the students that you don't think are your gifted students. And when teachers can identify that, then they can approach parents and saying, this is what we're seeing in your child.
Right.
What are you seeing? And we have tests, lists of questions. Do you see this? Do you see this? And parents start to go, oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. I thought I was the only one that my child was like that. And so those are the ones that we're trying to grab. So in answer to your question, both.
Both, right,
Both.
Okay.
Parents will see it, and once they start getting the characteristics of what they're looking at, teachers will see it and they'll start understanding the intensities and overexcitabilities, which is that incredible gifted advanced brain.
Yeah.
You've got the ones that are just stuck on Harry Potter and everything's Harry Potter, or Minecraft. That's a good one. Or, those kids that are intensely excitable about Greek mythology. There you go. That's that gifted brain.
Right.
That's that incredible advanced brain.
That's going to make so many parents feel so much better. Do you realise what you've just said?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because
I love talking to parents and they have their aha moment. They're like,
I bet.
He melts down because I've asked him to stop, to stop building the Lego thing. It's time for us to go, and you go, yep. That's what it looks like.
Traditionally, like if you were, honestly, I take my hat off to you because I don't know how you do it, but God, we'll get into that in a minute, the skills that you've got to do your job. But traditionally, if you're in a room with a load of kids and you've got one that won't bloody sit down because there's a train going past or whatever, that's just, you're just labelled as naughty.
Yes.
That's just, you are a naughty boy.
Absolutely. Naughty boy with a lot to say.
Yes, exactly. Sit there and just do as you're told. That's the traditional thing, isn't it?
Yes.
So, as you were speaking then, I was thinking, wow, I love what you're saying because it is, and we see it a lot going back to homeschooling. You see it a lot, and that's probably why they started homeschooling, isn't it? Because they can see it and they're like, and hang on a minute, you're not going to fit into that school system.
That's right.
But you see that thing a lot where they're just intensely involved in something and they won't stop, and everything's Harry Potter and Harry Potter this, and I've got to wear the Harry Potter hat and
the language,
the language.
God,
that makes me feel so much better, and I know it's going to make so many other parents feel so much better.
And that is why we need the program that we have. And that is why gifted students won't just make it on their own. Because a lot of people think, when they think advanced, they think bright, brilliant minds, they think they'll be fine. They'll be fine. They'll make it on their own. But the thing is, they don't, because they either underplay and underachieve, or they're labelled as naughty, or can't sit still, or they're socially inept, and so that they're ostracised, or separated from their peers. And that's why we do what we do.
Fantastic.
And it is a special need. It's on the special need spectrum rather than the advancement spectrum, because the intensities and the characteristics and behaviours that come with it are the thing that we are working on so deeply. Yeah.
If I was a teacher and I was in New Zealand and I wanted to come and work for your company, what, is it called a company or what do you call it? Association or
we just call it the trust.
The trust. Okay. So I wanted to come and work for your trust.
The program. It's called the program.
Yeah. What special skills would I need to bring? What?
Well, the interesting thing is that there's two pathways. There's the pathway of just your approach, and then there's the pathway of your skill and knowledge. And usually you've got one without the other, or possibly, if I had the approach without the knowledge when I started.
Yes.
And so for me, it was immersing myself in learning best practice, especially through the process of writing the curriculum once we went off on our own. Writing the curriculum was amazing because I got to research, And
Did you actually write a curriculum?
Yeah.
Wow. Kim? Wow.
Yeah, muggins.
How long did that take?
It was, a couple of lockdowns.
Yeah.
It was handy. It's researching best practice. It's learning about what's really needed here. And best practice on an international level overlaps beautifully. There are some very clear guidelines about what gifted students need to learn and be their best selves. And so that was my changing. I think I brought homeschooling to it. And I think when I look back on it now, I think I had already released all the old school. I hesitate to say that because it's a little unfair because our schools are really trying to innovate now.
Right.
And there's some really amazing stuff being done in schools. Let me make that clear. But for my personal journey, I had come away from the institution of school, gone through homeschooling, and now really I had a real passion for some form of special ed, and I didn't think it was going to be in advanced and complex students. The teaching was probably, when I started, was the most challenging teaching I'd ever done, and I've taught South Auckland,
Yes. Doesn't get worse than that.
Yeah. Which I loved also. But it's really, really challenging teaching.
Cut your teeth there.
For all the reasons that you've said. You take the three most full-on kids in a class, and you bring them to me with all the three most full-on kids in that class, and you put them all,
I don't know how you
together.
Do it.
It's about understanding them. And the more you understand them, the more exciting it gets because you see these incredible minds, and the behaviour becomes secondary to the advancement of them as a learner, their skills, and you see the growth. You can see the growth in them. You can see the understandings in them. And, people who understand about gifted students say, oh my goodness, you've got 16 in a class. And those that don't so much say, oh, you've only got 6, I've got 32, Yeah. So it is challenging teaching, but I just,
the rewards just outweigh it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the further I've gone in and the more my skill and knowledge grows. I never really answer your questions, do I? Because your question was...
you answered it perfectly. But do you need do you also need a special? You answered that perfectly because you told us what you need to bring emotionally to the role.
Yes.
But do you need a teaching certificate to work for your program?
Yes.
You do.
So we are trained teachers. We're all trained teachers.
Okay.
We've got one who specialised in early childhood, which is great because for our juniors, and she has a more hands-on sort of approach, which is fabulous. So we can use her in that way for our younger students. But basically, teaching is what you need.
Yes.
And then as you get into the program, then we mentor you into the and open warmth about full-on kids, and incredible kids, and then we just train on the job. We train as we're going. Beyond that, I'm really keen to do some extra study myself from what I've come up to. So there's very few teachers, the hen's teeth, that are trained in gifted education specifically.
Right.
Yeah. So for me, it's just a lot of reading, a lot of research, and a lot of input, on top of the practical work, day-to-day work.
Yeah. I just want to ask a couple of, what's the word? I don't know what the word is, anyway, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions because I can't think of the word.
I hate it when that happens.
I know. I'm 50, what can I say? My mind's bubbly.
Or you.
But, so first of all, is this a free program or do kids have to pay to be in this program?
So because we have zero monetary support from the Ministry of Education, we run ourselves. And to run ourselves, unfortunately, it's a user-pay system.
Right.
Because otherwise we couldn't function. So the way that we work is the cluster school has a portion that they put in, and then the parents pay per day.
Right.
And we've tried to keep that as low as we can, and we're working all the time on scholarships. So we've got quite a few scholarship students in our program as well. We've got a scholarship program with one particular school here that probably wouldn't put children in if it wasn't for that scholarship program. We know we're only scratching the surface. We've got 122 students this year, but we know that conservatively 5%, but even up to 10% of all students in our classes are gifted. And so that's thousands of students that we haven't tapped into yet. And a lot of the barrier is paying. So we do the very best we can. We keep we run on the smell of an oily rag. We keep our costs down. We've had some fabulous success with local sponsorship with businesses, and as you grow, it's interesting. People get to hear of you and the right people in the right places. So that's been really exciting for us.
Yeah.
We've just expanded 2 classes around South Taranaki. So now we're tapping into the rural sector, and rural gifted students are even more isolated than urban gifted students.
Yeah.
And then we've got Māori gifted students that we haven't tapped into, and we've got the underachievement of girls, which we're also working on as well. So there's quite a few avenues that we understand that paying per day for the students to be in our program can be a really big deal for some families.
Is it expensive?
So we have kept it at $47 a day.
New Zealand dollars, 40
New Zealand dollars, yes.
Which is about 20 US, maybe 25 US, I think.
Yeah, you do the maths.
Yeah, just for the US audience,
yes,
I know
absolutely.
they'll be saying and about £23. So that's good.
Well, if they're having tutoring an hour's tutoring session, you're paying.
So that's for all day.
Yes.
And how long is a day?
9 till 3.
That's
great.
That's
your
great.
Classic. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what you're saying, that there's some families obviously that wouldn't be able to afford that.
Absolutely.
What would you do for a family who were like, you saw a really talented, gifted child and they just didn't have the money? What would happen?
And the other thing is, it's not just seeing the child, it's seeing the family dynamic and the parents. And often we have parents come to us who see intensities in their own children.
Yeah.
Who need something. Our program is a lifesaver for some kids. It's their breathing space in the middle of a really chaotic school week, And we get stories all the time. So we're working on pathways all the time. Our board they're a fabulous group of people, and we're trying to take down as many barriers as we can. I mean, even working with cluster schools, the rural schools, some of them are tiny little cluster schools, and what they can provide for us is much less than what some of the large urban schools can provide. So we've had to adjust and grow. And we're adding to our scholarship all the time, our scholarship program. We have some wonderful community trusts here who are giving us more substantial amounts of money, and they go straight into students in program. Yeah. So
I love that about New Zealand, don't you? They're very much, they want to support you, don't they?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
especially with kids and things like that. I see it so many times. It's just lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, we are very fortunate with the businesses around us that have supported us. You know
what, Kim? Just on a side note, I mean, this is nothing to do, but did you read about the 2 lads that were busking and someone came and took all their money?
No.
Did you read about that? Well, he's called Sean. He's Tessa's friend, and they went busking in town in New Plymouth, and some lad or some guy came up and went to put money in and scooped the whole lot and ran away with all their money. I know, isn't it horrible?
Hello.
I know, but do you know what? So that happened on like the Wednesday.
Yeah.
By the Friday, they were fully booked with all these gigs that all New Plymouth businesses have pulled out and gone, you can come and sing at our place, we'll pay you. You can come and sing here. You can busk outside here.
Isn't that
New World
fantastic?
Supermarket. Yeah, come out here and busk.
Yeah.
Honestly, it gives me goosebumps. It's just like, I love it.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Absolutely.
And so I bet that your company is going to get so much funding in the future. Like,
and I think the bigger, as we grow, and as we get families who are saying, you know, that this has been such an important part of my child's growth, then that has a knock-on effect.
Yes, exactly.
You know? And we're so fortunate to have these wonderful community support. It's just amazing.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. I know sometimes that I hear you when we're having a coffee sometimes, and you'll say, oh, it's really sad because we had a child come and they didn't get into the programme, or we couldn't take them into the programme.
Yes.
What would be the deciding factor of you saying yes or no to come into the programme?
So we've tried to make our referral process quite robust, because it's really important to us that we've got the right students with us and the students who will get the most out of the program. And we are a limited resource program, so we try very hard to make sure that we're tapping into the right students. So either if the parent wants to refer, they go through the school and the school refers to us. There's a parent referral form, a school referral form, and then it comes to us and we go through and again, I go back to the characteristics. There are red flags that we're looking for that we go, some of them are really easy. Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You know, you're definitely a fit. Others don't flag up so well, so we go and visit them. And sometimes we visit them in schools, sometimes we get them to visit our program and spend some hours with us and with our students. We have, there's testing that you can do that is creative thinking testing. So it's, a classic, I'll give you a circle, I'll give you a page full of circles. I want you to draw as many pictures within the circles as you can that tell a story. And the kids who's thinking that aren't out of the box thinking, they'll draw a sun and they'll draw a ice cream cone and they'll draw those
something I'd draw.
A clock face.
It's an orange.
Yeah, an orange. Yeah, put a leaf on it and it's an apple. You know, because those are the I always joke with my students that would probably be what I would do. But the students that have that more diverse thinking or that more out-of-the-box thinking, they're going to be cutting it in half and creating a hamburger. They're going to be, the stuff that they do is telling a full story around this little picture with a circle, you know, and or they use it in a much bigger context.
Yeah.
And you're going, there's that thinking, there's that out-of-the-box thinking. And there's plenty of... a tree has fallen on a car and they show the picture to the student. They say, what's happened? And they said, there was a storm and the tree fell on the car and it squashed the car. Whereas a gifted student might say something along the lines of, the tree sneezed. The tree sneezed and the car came with a tissue to save it, but then the tree fell. Those sorts of out of the box thinking. So those are the sorts of things. So we've got a little toolbox, if you like,
right,
to really unpack the because even very introverted students, if you're testing very introverted students or if you're meeting with them, they don't always give you enough for you to say, yep, this is a fit for you. But just because they're quiet and introverted doesn't mean they're not a fit for our program.
Right.
So it's having multiple tools that you can use to identify, And the other interesting thing is you look at a parent's referral and you look at a teacher's referral and you could swear they're talking about two different kids.
Really?
Because often our gifted students don't show school what they see, what the parents see at home. Or vice versa, So there's things that and Kutch is amazing. She has a very clear flag system. You go, oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. So.
Oh, I was going to ask if I've got one of my questions is, do they get extra credits or anything on towards their exams or anything?
You can answer it now.
Yeah, so that doesn't, no. Okay, all right, then let's move on there then.
You could, there are other ways and means of doing that.
Yes.
So some of our gifted students go into advanced maths programs. For instance, if maths is their thing or if science is their thing, their parents may take them into advanced maths and science programs. That's not what we do.
Right.
I'm not an astrophysicist.
No.
And so what we do is we are teaching well-being being who you are, learning to be, and then we're teaching critical and creative thinking. That's what our program entails. It has nothing to do with more knowledge in the areas of strength necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah. So no.
I've got a question here that someone asked from, like I say, our private New Zealand community, and she just said, for kids that are mildly gifted, would you recommend public school or private school? She lives in the US, so
right.
Yeah.
The word mildly gifted is the one that pops up for me, because going on what we've already talked about, giftedness is a neurodiversity in your brain. It's something that you're born with. It's the way you think, the way you perceive the world. And so being mildly perceiving of the world or mildly out-of-the-box thinking, it doesn't really happen that way. You either do have a gifted brain or you have other neurodiversities that may not be down the gifted pathway. So I think when they're talking about being mildly gifted, they're talking about that they're advanced, that their child is advanced.
Yes, yeah.
So I guess that the answer would be look for the other characteristics. So if you can get online and you can look at all the characteristics of giftedness.
Oh, okay.
And it's really quite fascinating because you can see where your child may fit. And with those leadership things, or those, the sense of humour, or the questioning, or the curiosity, or the obsession about, a particular topic or subject, all of those things, those overexcitabilities we've talked about and sensibilities, those exist because of your gifted brain. So the argument about state school versus private school, it really comes down to what is going to fit best for your individual student. Yeah. Because there'd be no generalisation saying every gifted student is so diverse that I know here in New Plymouth, or in Taranaki as a whole, the high school options are quite narrow because we're small in a province, but there are some definite differences between the high schools about their approach, and some of them really fit well for those really diverse learners.
Right.
The short answer is personal preference.
That's what
and asking the questions about their gifted program. Yeah.
Because to me, you just think, okay, well, if I had a child who was absolutely brilliant at maths, like let's just say maths and science, you would just think, oh, we'll just I'll go in and I'll say to the teacher, just give them more homework, or just like you want them to be pushed, I suppose, don't you? Because that would be my fear, is if I had like a child that was, like I say, brilliant at maths, and they were just like sitting there twiddling their thumbs, waiting for the whole class, waiting to finish, sort of thing. Yes. But like you say, maybe then the answer there would be maybe just to give them extra tuition outside, just in maths, because that's what you're saying is the giftedness is just the whole. There's a lot more to it than that, isn't there? That's right. That's right.
A lot of problems arise with our really advanced students around the idea of boredom at school. So that in their areas of expertise and passion, they do spend a lot of time waiting. And we strategise around that, what that looks like and how that feels, and what we can do in terms of the students self-advocating and going into school and saying, I've brought this, could I... The sad thing is that it does come down to parents and the students to be able to grow their own program outside of the four walls of school, which is a sad reality. Yeah.
But there's only so much a school can do, Kim.
Yeah, that's right. And the pressure that they're under, resource-wise, and the diversity of the students that they're dealing with, and the society as a whole. So I certainly know that I'm in a privileged position because I am working with a very specific group of students, and so I can really focus in on the needs of those specific students. Whereas when you're in a class of 30-something, then I think New Zealand schools are getting better at using a program like ours, bringing in specialists from outside and supporting what's happening within the school. I think there's a big improvement.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
No, I've got a huge amount of respect for schools and teachers.
Yes, absolutely.
I really have.
As
because
do I,
you just think,
and with our gifted students, they do tend to sit back and they say, feed me like a little bird, feed me, I want more. And so what I try to teach, especially I teach the senior students, so sort of 11, 12, 13-year-olds, I say you have to meet halfway. So you have to, when you're saying this is boring, it's not good enough just to sit back and expect someone to change that for you. This is boring means you're not being fed, which means you then need to think, what can I do? What can I bring? And that's a lot of, for parents out there of gifted and intense students, it's self-advocacy, it's resilience, it's finding strategies and ways to improve the situation. It's approaching teachers halfway, meeting them halfway and saying, can I not do spelling lists? Spelling lists is one of those ones that pop up all the time. They can spell like adults, and they can certainly find what they need to find where they need to find it. So the rote learning of spelling lists becomes a real problem for them. But I say to them, don't just go and say, why do I have to do spelling? Go and say, during spelling time, I have a real fascination with marine biology. Would I be able to use my spelling time to delve into the language that surrounds marine biology? And you will find that teachers will discuss that with you. Whereas if you just go and say spelling's boring,
exactly,
then they're going to go, off you go and do your list, sort of thing.
Kim, you've just brought back a massive, horrible memories for me when you mentioned spelling. Do you remember when we used to go to the spelling bee at homeschooling? I used to dread it every single time.
It wasn't competitive at all.
No, it was hideous, wasn't it? Oh, you'd always get that child up there that knew how to spell, I don't know, encyclopedia, and they knew how to spell it backwards. And
to make it harder, let's spell backwards.
And then your child would go up there and you'd been practicing for months beforehand, and they'd go, how do you spell boat? And it's just like B-O-W-T, and it's like, no.
You're just cringing inside.
Oh my gosh.
And actually it's fascinating because a lot of our gifted students, writing is not their deal.
No.
Writing and spelling is not their deal.
That's good to know.
And so it's finding ways for them to communicate that advanced thinking. And because that is a barrier right there at school, for those kids who are on the BOWT list, it is. And unfortunately, teachers, and I speak to myself and my homeschooling life, tend to work to weakness. If you see a weakness in the student, you want to prop that weakness up, you want to work on it and you want to strengthen it. Whereas as adults, how often do we work in our areas of weakness?
God, so true.
We work in our areas of strength and we avoid our areas of weakness. My husband is an incredible mathematician, an incredible accountant, and spreadsheets are a work of art to him. I just see it as loads of numbers in a list, but he doesn't like writing letters. I can write till the cows come home.
Yeah.
He's very good at writing letters. He just doesn't particularly like doing it. It's not his area of expertise. So we avoid the things that we are weaker in. But in schools, hour after hour after hour, you're working in your weak areas sometimes, at times. And that's really tough. And so what we try and do is we always try and be strength-based. We're always working on areas of strength. So if you've got these incredible writers, then let's hit that. Let's strengthen that. Let's look at... we often talk about using expertise. Let's get people who are really strong in the field of writing and work alongside, or in art. Let's use YouTube to do a step-by-step in a new type of shading, and let's work on that. So part of our program is them using their strength areas and showing growth in those strength areas. So going into areas of new development because they spend a lot of their time knowing in their strength areas, so let's push them to new strength areas. So that's the flip side of the weakness areas.
I love that. Absolutely love that. I wish I'd remembered that. I wish I knew that when I was homeschooling, because like you say, you do tend to, you're not good enough.
As a homeschooling mum, teacher will know, as a homeschooling mum, we always look to the areas of weakness. And
yes.
think, oh my goodness, I've got to teach them how to spell boat. Come on now.
Yeah.
And when I look back now, if I look back on the work that we did when I was homeschooling the kids when they were younger, I'm thinking, man, we were rocking it. We were doing some really cool stuff. But I couldn't see that at the time.
No.
You look to the weakness. You go, oh, sure, they wrote a paragraph, and yes, it's interesting, and the writing was quite good, but where's the comma? I told you about using commas, you know? It's like, come on now. And you go straight to the area of weakness. Yeah. And so that's what we need to be thinking in terms of our gifted students. Let's work on the areas of strength, because I have parents come to me and say, sure, they're really good at science ideas or they're very politically motivated, but I just want them to be able to do long division, you know? Yeah. And so you say that will come or it won't come. But for us, let's work in these strength areas and really build them, you know, in those strong areas.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you know, we've been talking for an hour now and it feels like I've been talking for you to 10 minutes. I could go and talk to you forever. I love this topic. It's such an interesting topic and I've learned so much. But before we wrap up, I just want to, there's a couple of things I want to ask you, famous last words. Be here in another hour.
I'll keep it short.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, I do get rambly.
No, you don't. You're perfect. But I've got so many questions that... First of all, if I was a parent and my child didn't get into your program, but I felt that, you know, this child, I could see all these characteristics. Maybe they didn't have all of them, but there was some. What would you tell me to? How could I help my child in that area? What could I do to?
Use them to advocate. So get them to tell you what their needs are at school. Get them to tell you where their areas of struggle is. Get them to tell you where their frustrations are. Where would they like to go further? And then it's all relationship building with school. If you're building some good, sound relationships with school and with the teacher, and it's all, unfortunately for teachers, it's all in the way that you approach. So you say, look, I'm seeing these areas. Could we put something in place and get a bit of a program, an education program that just suits for your child in that school? And you'll find that there are many schools and teachers out there that are open to learning more about that child, about your child, and you're the one that can give them the information that they need. So I'd say support them that way. Right. Do a bit of your own research, find out their characteristics, find their needs, find their fascinations, find what works for them. Find a small group of areas in school where they are really struggling. Assembly. I hate going to assembly, Mum. I hate it. It really upsets me. Could it be that we don't go to assembly? Could we make that change just so there's one part of the day that they're not having to face that is a really difficult, hard thing for them to do?
Do you reckon New Zealand teachers would be up for that?
Again, I'd love to say absolutely, and absolutely there are many that are. It's relationship building. Yeah, so it's
important.
Yeah, absolutely. Going in gently, asking the questions, and then saying, look, this is an area of, and then you move on to the next area. So do your low-hanging fruit first. Do the stuff that's most important first. And sometimes you'll find with your child that there is one area that is clouding a lot of stuff about going to school. And if we could change or tweak that one area, then it's like a release valve, or it lifts, and the child's going, I'm being heard, there's some changes being put in place, and then move on to the next. You know, I know you don't want to be us as parents, because I'm the same. You don't want to be the squeaky wheel. But sometimes advocating is really important, and doing it in a gentle and connective way with the teacher. So trying to build that relationship with the teacher.
I love that. I love that. And it gives me real hope, because as you was talking then, I was thinking, God, you know, when Sonny went to school in England, there's no way I would have had the nerve to go in and say, oh, excuse me, can he not come to assembly because he doesn't like it? Yeah. But I know for a fact, and my kids only went to school for 2 years in New Zealand, but I know that you could get that relationship with the teacher in New Zealand. It's a different way, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, if you are listening to this and you've got kids in the UK or kids in America, it's completely different. It's just, it's a more, I feel like the New Zealand schools are not, they're not perfect. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying it just feels very... they're more to do with the well-being of the child. They try to be anyway. That's the feeling I get.
And that's definitely growing. You know,
Yeah.
well-being has become such a huge thing.
Yeah.
And schools are looking for ways. And if you look at it from the teacher's perspective, if there's something that is going to anchor that child in your class and is going to help them and support them, then that's only going to be good for you.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Kim, I love you. You're brilliant. I really wanted to ask you what your typical day would look like. You know, can I just ask you that before? I know we're running over, but
10 words or less. Basically, we're in three. I've pretty much covered it. Actually, the day is broken up into three areas. The first area is wellbeing, individual development, learning about those intensities, overexcitabilities, learning about your strength areas, all that sort of thing. So that's a whole session. The middle session is what's sometimes called, we don't call it, but sometimes called passion projects or talent projects, and that's where the student selects and goes into their strength area, and then we facilitate getting support around new learning around that. And then the last is about critical thinking. So we have a framework of thinking that we teach them that they can use for any project, for any approach, for any subject, and it's about delving much deeper than just scratching the surface with any research or thinking. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I remember once you telling me that you were going up Mount Taranaki and you were doing this really cool stuff. And
with
I remember,
a scientist.
Yeah.
It was fabulous, yeah.
What an experience.
Yeah.
What to be able to offer children that is just fabulous.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I just want to say, as a friend this time, you know, I mean, watching you go through your journey as a homeschooler, and I know you know, as we all did, struggled.
Ups and downs,
There was definitely ups and downs, wasn't there? But what really stands out here, Kim, is all that groundwork you put in as a homeschooler. Yeah. Other people's kids are now benefiting from that, and it's just so wonderful. Yeah. You know, if someone could have told you when you were homeschooling, you were going through those days and we'd meet and we'd be crying and we'd be, oh, we hate this, it's just so hard. What are we doing? You know, if someone said, listen, girl, in 10 years' time, you're going to be working in this program and you're going to be teaching talented, gifted kids, and you're going to be helping them, and oh, I'm just so proud of you, you know, because
it's all a journey, isn't it?
It is.
It's all a journey. It's all learning. And same with you. You know, you and I journeyed that one together. Yeah. And
do you promise you'll come back and talk about homeschooling?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you...
because I really want you to come. Yes, I do. You're brilliant. And I really want you to talk about the fact that you went into homeschooling as a teacher.
Yeah, oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, because...
we laugh about it now.
No, so you haven't heard the last of Kim, because she's going to come back. I call her Cum because she's from New Zealand.
Okay, Loz.
She calls me Loz. No, thank you so much, darling. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Fabulous.
Yeah, just loved it. So thank you so much. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Oh. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week. We have loved having you here with us.
If you love this week's show, please share this with your friends. Send it to anybody you know that wants to think about moving to New Zealand, and get on over here yourself.
And tell them how brilliant it is as well. And also, if you haven't signed up for our free 5-day video guide showing you what life is really like in New Zealand, then go over to the website and sign up. You are missing out. This is brilliant. Go over to www.nzahead/free and we will send you 5 days worth of videos about what life is like in New Zealand. You are going to love it. So one more time, that website that you need to sign up for the free 5-day guide is www.nzahead/free. So we're going to see you next week. Until then, have a great week and we'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Say bye again. Bye.
Bye.